Joe Biden has publicly said that he wants a new world order and a regime change in Russia. But if you think that he wants a new world order and a regime change in Russia, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? Hello there, you 5.3 million awakening wonders. We continue to journey, don't we, against the odds in spite of the obstacles. You know they want you dumb, don't you, that they need you docile and compliant. You noticed it when you was at school. You've seen it your whole life. It continues still. The endless bombardment of muddying information. A little while ago on the telly or whatever, Joe Biden goes, I want a new world order. And he also said, I want a regime change in Russia. And the mainstream media, those guys, the corporate media, the legacy media, you use your phrase, let me know in the comments what you prefer, said, the conspiracy theorists, just because Joe Biden's saying he wants a new world order and a regime change, they're thinking he wants a regime change and a new world order. I mean, it's not as if America has a long, rich history of changing regimes and trying to establish a new world order, is it? Joe Biden either said those things by mistake, or he said them because they're sort of on his mind and that. The way you sort of, if you've like just ate a donut, you might say, oh, this is a sweet situation with a hole in the middle of it. It might be in the middle of your mind. I don't know how the human brain works. Hey, listen, I'm still on tour. If you want to come and see me on tour, you can. And if you want to sign up to my mailing list, click the link at the end, because I need to have direct contact with you, because we are going to continue to do pretty unusual stuff, and I want to be able to connect with you directly, just in case there was suddenly an obstacle, all right? So click on the link, and if you want to come see me live, you can see me live. Now, shall we have a little look at Joe Biden?
We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations.
God, Joe Biden's a bit boring, isn't he? It's quite hard to watch, isn't it? I'm really trying to concentrate, but I've got that feeling you know when someone boring starts talking to you, you think, oh shit, oh no, they're not going to stop. And you sort of have to sort of steel yourself, like organise your face. What face should I do while this boring person talks? But inside you're thinking, shut up! This is boring. Are you being deliberately boring? Are you trying to bore the life right out of me? I'm not being critical of him because he's old and that. Old people, who don't love an old person? I'm saying that he's making geopolitics and a potential world war seem like a really tiresome thing, like he's describing something that happened to him in a bowling alley in 1950. Oh, then I reckon 8 of the pins went down. Oh, shut up! And
now's the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there.
Oh, what? Hang about.
There's going to be a new world order out there.
Ixnay on the new world order, nay! Ixnay on the new world order! Now, let's face it, this channel has been subject to some criticism over recent weeks for talking about what are dubbed conspiracy theories. What I would call them are alternative narratives, often narratives that prove fruitful and true. You only need to look at the last couple of years to see the trends in media and the censorship around certain issues that have eventually become permissible to discuss.
And we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world.
What he said there, albeit in a way that was a bit boring to listen to, is that the rest of the free world should galvanise against Russia and create a new world order. Here's some headlines that were generated by that. Joe Biden's new world order comment jumped on by conspiracy theorists. Like, that's the story. Like, the story is that, rather than a trend and a history of opportunism by the United States of America. Read Naomi Klein's shock doctrine about CIA activity in Latin America, and then decide whether or not this is a conspiracy theory or a description of events that occurred. Oh no, Joe Biden said New World Order and conspiracy theorists are losing it. One of the things you have to do to maintain a power structure is discredit any alternative narrative. You have to automatically do that. People that believe in alternatives are crackpots and wackos, whether that's alternative ideas around health or diet or ideology or philosophy or culture. Those people have to be dismissed out of hand, because otherwise, what is it? It's a threat. You should be flattered, because the reason they're bothering to condemn you is because they recognise that people are awakening. Joe Biden mentioned the New World Order and conspiracy theorists lost it. Why not look at whether or not there have been regime changes around the world? Why not have a look at whether or not there are allied forces globally that are operating coherently? So the first thing they'll do is try to hit you on the head with a conspiracy theorist hammer. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're saying stuff. You're saying stuff that's not on proper news. Shut up, conspiracy theorist. And then, like, if that don't work, if you go, no, actually, this is not conspiracy theorist, I can rationally explain to you exactly why I mean. Well, you don't care about Ukrainian people, do you? What about Ukrainian people? I do care about Ukrainian people. I'm just actually trying to understand this situation using information outside of the sources issued to me by people that possibly benefit from a sustained state of war globally, continually. As Glenn Greenwald said, the things that are tragic about the war in Ukraine are common to all wars. It's terrible that people are suffering. It's terrible that a refugee crisis is being induced. This is true of all wars, even wars that overtly, financially and politically benefit sanctioned nations.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Capping a series of diplomatic summits in Europe, Mr. Biden delivered a speech on Saturday in Poland about the war in Ukraine, an apparently ad-libbed remark at the conclusion of his address. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power, quickly eclipsed the rest of his speech. Ad-libbed. It's not Miles Davis. Ad-lib it may well have been, but it's an ad-lib that is somewhat in keeping with American foreign policy in the last 50, 60 years or so. Administration officials and lawmakers stressed that the United States was not seeking regime change in Russia. We do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia, or anywhere else for that matter. Regime change in Russia? No, I mean, over in Yemen. I mean, nowhere. In Syria. No, we don't do regime change. What does that even mean? I've never even heard that phrase. Regime change. Oh yeah, no, we wouldn't do that, said Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken. The remarks were the most explicit yet from the US president that he sees no future for Putin as Russia's head of state. What is exactly the aim? Asked former Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis in an interview. Is it regime change in Russia? Well, whenever the United States tried regime change, it didn't turn out very well and has never been tried with a nuclear power. The fact is that when a president says something about regime change, it's not a ludicrous and outrageous tangent that he's exploring, some mad riff like James Joyce on a stream of consciousness. He's talking about stuff that happens all the time. Look, if you're not questioning the US agenda, then I don't think you know how to ask questions. If you're just blindly accepting what you're being told, this is a humanitarian issue for Ukrainian people. What about all the other times in the past when we found out that there was like some mineral or resource thing? Yeah, no, I've changed since then. I was nuts then. But now, I've really got myself together. Now, this is not saying that Ukrainian people aren't suffering. Obviously, they are. That's not saying that Russia haven't got their own mendacious oligarchical agenda. Obviously, they do have. I'm not like, Russia's a great country. I presume Russia, like all powerful nations, is run by people that are corrupt. That would be my assumption. A US president who, during an atrocious war, does not mean what he says on matters of war and peace and must be corrected by his hyperventilating staff, said Varoufakis, is a clear and present danger to all. Now, a lot of people have said that about Biden for a while, haven't they? Sometimes it seemed a little bit mean, but there he is out there. Now that's become his excuse. What they denied. No, this guy, he's clear as a bell. He may be old, but he knows what's going on. Hey, I'm going to do a regime change. It's a new world order. Oh, fucking hell, he's nuts, this geezer. You see how old he is? Comes bath time, give him a blanket. Don't listen to him. We won't even let him use the remote control. Why, what's on? What's this do? Get rid of Putin. Hunter, give me your laptop. You naughty boy. Talking of conspiracy theories, here are some conspiracy theories that actually happened. US intervention. Let's just list them. Between 1947 and 1989, the United States tried to change other nations' governments 72 times. I mean, if you do anything 72 times, if it was like goals scored from free kicks or 3-pointers scored in basketball, you'd say, well done. It includes 66 covert operations and 6 overt ones. Well, that's more than a hobby, isn't it? Also, by the way, it's not a right-wing thing or a left-wing thing, is it? Because you've had, over that course of time, you've had everyone have a little go. And what I can test is there ain't no bloody real difference. Most US secret wars were against other democratic states. What he's saying in his speech and the bits we're meant to take seriously, not that bit's good, no, he meant that bit, no, he didn't mean that bit, oh, that was a fart, he didn't mean that bit. Then the main thrust was, we're going to do democracy, we're going to have a big lightning democracy show, right? Well, they were doing secret wars against democratic states, so is it right or is it wrong? Haven't you noticed that these days? The peculiar elasticity and then sudden rigidity of morality. Morality can go, whoop, we're allowed to do this now. You mustn't say that. You mustn't say that. That was wrong. Like, what is it then? No one's got any principles. No one's got any actual values. Globally, there were 117 partisan electoral interventions between 1946 and 2000. The majority of these, almost 70% of them, were by the US. 21 such interventions took place between 1990 and 2000, of which 18 were by the US. They're the Beatles of interventions. 60 different independent countries have been the targets of such interventions. 2/3 of interventions were done in secret, with voters having no idea that foreign powers were actively trying to influence the results. Now, I don't know what that is, a conspiracy theory or what, but it don't sound like democracy, does it? Our friend Caitlin Johnston, the great writer, says, all the self-righteous posturing by the Western political media class about the need to pour weapons into Ukraine is not really about saving Ukrainian lives. Only negotiating a ceasefire can do that. That makes sense, doesn't it? But about seizing this golden opportunity to hurt Russia's geostrategic interests as much as possible. Oh, conspiracy theory. Ukraine on its own is powerless to stop Russia from taking Kiev, no matter how many weapons are sent, but those weapons can be used to fight a long, bloody insurgency, which costs many more lives, keeps Moscow militarily preoccupied and hemorrhaging money, and ultimately hurts Putin's popularity at home. This by itself will do a great deal to advance US interests, but on top of that, you've got the even greater benefit of manufacturing international consent for unprecedented acts of economic warfare against the entire nation of Russia, as well as killing Nord Stream 2 and rallying immense support for NATO and the imperial military intelligence machine. The Western world is now a united front against the menace of Vladimir Putin, in much the same way it united against the threat of global terrorism after 9/11, and we're probably only seeing the beginning of the agendas that this will be used to roll out. We can expect these agendas to be used in an attempt to impoverish, undermine, agitate, and ultimately collapse and balkanise Russia. This would leave China standing alone without its nuclear superpower guard bear, and much more vulnerable to imperial operations geared toward thwarting the emergence of a true multipolar world, a goal US imperialists have had in writing for 3 decades. That sounds a bit like a kind of New World Order, doesn't it? And it doesn't sound ridiculous and implausible when you break it down like that. If Caitlin Johnston were a lawyer and we were looking for motivation, the balkanisation, the breaking down of Russia, the removal of that threat, the prevention of a multipolar world, and the possibility of a centralised force that built up of American-sponsored institutions, agencies, non-government organisations and large corporations are now free to maraud across the world in pursuit of their interests without any counter-narrative or threat. Now, that, to me, isn't like something you can definitely prove, but it's not a wacky conspiracy theorist, is it? Not when you remind yourself, between 1947 and 1989, the United States tried to change other nations' governments 72 times. Yeah, but 73, we would never do that. It includes 66 covert operations, so most of the time, they didn't tell you. Only 6 times. Like, look at the headlines again. New World Order jumped on by conspiracy theorists. Oh, where's your tinfoil hat? Well, where my tinfoil hat is over there. Here are my files of times where this happened again and again and again in the past. And attempting to understand American foreign policy does not exonerate Russians' actions in Ukraine. And the reason we're not talking about that particularly is because that's already on the news. You can watch that stuff whenever you want. It's a tragic, awful, terrible situation. But what it isn't is a passport to not discussing the complex realities, the historical global narratives, for which there's considerable evidence. And I think ignoring that would not make you like, I don't know, some patriot of kindness, but a sort of idiot. No meaningful diplomatic effort is being made by Washington to end the violence. Ukrainian lives are being spent like pennies to facilitate the agenda of US planetary domination by whipping up international support for the strangulation of Russia, while pouring vast fortunes into the military-industrial complex rather than taking even the tiniest step toward de-escalation and diplomacy. Fascinating opinions. And I think when coupled with the evidence of previous regime changes and electoral interference, provides a case that there are some things to consider alongside the tragedy of the suffering of Ukrainian people. I don't know about you, I can do both. I can hold both those things in my little old noggin at the same time. Wrong what Russia are doing in Ukraine. Awful that there's a humanitarian crisis and all of this suffering. Also likely that the counter-narrative is being simplified and obscured in order to facilitate certain objectives. Based on the past, looks like it's possible. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What you think is so much more important than what I think. Collectively, we can come up with different perspectives, different solutions, different ideas. It might take a while, but let's get on with it. What else are we going to do? Just sit dumbly staring at screens, eating the dull gloop of the mainstream? Let's keep moving forward. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one. Oh, this one, cheeky little guys. Look at them up there trying their hardest. Sign up to my mailing list. It's just one click away. And if you're in the UK or if you fancy coming here, come see me live. It's always a good experience in my humble little opinion. Stay free.